Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February meeting of the Christchurch Borough Council's Planning Committee. I'm Councillor David Jones, I'm the Chairman. The Vice Chairman, who unfortunately I suspect is stuck in traffic, is not here at the moment, but I will ask those members and officers present around the table to introduce themselves. I know they have their names in front of them, but the cameras don't always pick that up. So, starting with Councillor Abbott.
Councillor Abbott for Grange Ward.
Councillor Denise Jones, also Grange Ward.
Councillor Peter Hall, Town Centre.
Daniel Rena-Farhay, Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Daniel Lucas, I'm the Principal Planning Lawyer from Legal Services.
Linda King, Development Management Manager.
David Hodges, Team Leader Development Management.
Councillor Nick Geary, North Highcliffe and Walkford Ward.
Vicky Hallam, Councillor for Highcliffe Ward.
I'll just take a few moments to run through the procedure which we should be following today. All the members have had comprehensive planning reports sent to them well in advance of this meeting in respect of the applications before us tonight. Each application will be presented by the case officer and the maps and diagrams will be displayed on the scheme behind me. When the presentation has concluded, I will invite those members of the public who have contacted the council and asked to speak to come to the opposite end of the table to me. Speeches must not be derogatory and must relate to material planning issues. The time allowed is 3 minutes, and in the interest of fairness, that limit will be strictly timed and enforced. At the end of the public presentations, no further information may be circulated to the committee. I will then ask members of the committee if they have any questions of fact in respect of the information that they've heard. After members have asked any questions, we will move into debate. Provided a motion is moved and seconded, a vote will be taken, and that vote, except in the very unusual circumstances outlined in the council's constitution, will be final. I hope that you find the proceedings interesting, and that if you have any questions, the officers, the Vice Chairman or myself will be only too pleased to answer them after the meeting. I must ask, when the meeting actually is in progress, that please remain silent, and we will answer your questions afterwards if there are any concerns. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be filmed by the council and broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the chamber, it is possible that the cameras will capture your image. By your presence, you are deemed to consent to being filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. As the chairman of the meeting, I can, at my discretion, terminate or suspend filming if, in my opinion, continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings of the meeting, or if I consider that continued filming might infringe the rights of any individual or breach any statutory provision. Finally, there are no planned fire drills for this evening, so if the fire alarm does sound, please evacuate the building immediately, either through the double doors there and out, or through the double doors there out into the foyer and then out through the doors by which you entered. One final point, would be very grateful if you would switch your mobile phones off, or we do appreciate that sometimes people have to be contactable. In that case, if they could be switched to silent ring or vibrate or whatever. Thank you very much. So we'll now move into the meeting itself, and the first item is apologies for absence. Mr. Deville.
Yes, Chairman. Apologies from Councillors Davis, Grace, and Neil.
Thank you. I understand. I can't understand Councillor Davis's absence. I mean, who would want to miss an English winter to go to South Africa? I ask myself, and miss a planning committee meeting as well. It's just incomprehensible. Are there any other apologies? Is that the lady? We'll take the minutes, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in the matters before us tonight? Councillor Mrs. Jones.
In the interest of transparency, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to declare that on the item B, Highcliffe Castle tea rooms, I am disabled, but I do not regard this as a prejudicial pecuniary interest. And in C, I do eat at times at the Somerford.
Thank you. Members of the public will be shocked to learn that I tend to accompany Mrs. Jones when she eats at the Somerford, so I too would like that to be recorded for transparency. But again, I do not consider that to be a prejudicial interest. Are there any further declarations of interest? Councillor Hall.
Chairman, the same that I do eat at the Somerford, but I don't think that's really a pecuniary interest, so I don't really know why we're declaring.
Just for transparency, it's in case it's a prejudicial interest, but I know it isn't. And we're not declaring it as an interest, we're stating it for transparency. Okay, are there any further interests? A lady's just come in. Can I ask, is that no, it isn't. You're not involved with application A, the first one. No. Okay. Thank you very much. We have a public speaker for item A for the Avon Wharf meeting. Sorry, we have to approve the minutes first. Do I see a proposal for the minutes? That's proposed. Is that seconded? That's seconded. Is it your wish that I sign these minutes as a true and correct record of proceedings? Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we would normally begin by taking item 4A, and I do not like taking things out of order, but as the applicant, Mr. White, is not here at the moment, I don't think it would be appropriate to deal with that considering the traffic conditions that are at the moment. So if with the officers' agreement, I'll move to take for B, Highcliffe Castle Tea Rooms, Rotsey Drive.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you'll see from the description, this is an application for both planning permission and listed building consent to carry out works to the tea rooms at Highcliffe Castle and to facilitate disabled access from the tea rooms on the site. And the application has come to this committee as the site and the applicant are Christchurch Borough Council. So I presume all of the committee are very familiar with the site and the tea rooms on the eastern side of the building. Just to show you a little bit more detail, so as you'll see when we get to the photographs of the site, this is a modern 20th century part of the building, and the works are taking place on the far eastern elevation. So currently at the moment, there is a fire escape door on the east end elevation here, and what may be best described as a temporary ramp facility to facilitate access from the end of the building in an emergency if it was not possible to access the building from the other end. This leads out from the east elevation and then ultimately through this gate at the bottom right here. The difficulty currently is the width of the openings points for someone who is in a wheelchair. So the proposals, so existing floor plans are shown on here with the tea rooms at this level, and below is a storage level which is used by the authority in running and maintaining the building, and is a storage area. This similarly has a opening at the bottom here, which is of restricted head height for anyone working in that particular building. This is just a detail of the proposed plan. So the proposed plan is to widen this opening here and this gate to allow disabled access through there for a wheelchair. And the proposal is to remove that rather temporary looking structure and create a ramp which meets the Part M of the building regulations, and therefore meets our requirements under the Equalities Act and the public sector equalities duty to ensure safe public access to the building. So the door is out here, the ramp comes down here, the widened gate through the historic wall here, and therefore at the bottom we have the works to the basement area, where we in effect take the top lintel out and raise the head height. So this shows you the existing situation. As you see, it's very much a temporary facility with scaffold poles, and this is very poor quality and doesn't meet the necessary requirements to take someone safely out of the building. This is the gap in the wall which you intend to be amended, and it's only used for fire escape purposes, Chairman, and in the normal scheme of things it would not be a usual point of access into the building which comes from the other side, but purely for emergency if the route out through the other way was blocked. This is the wall. The tea rooms themselves are a sort of mid-20th century concrete block addition to Highcliffe Castle, and but are attached onto what's an earlier brick wall, and the gate sits in there. This is just showing you the bottom level, whereby we're looking to raise the height of this opening here, and where you've got to step down into the courtyard below. So this opening at the basement is just here, and then the fire escape is up here with the ramp. And this just to show you a little bit more in its context how the tea room sits against the very fine south facade of the building, with the gate and access, which is that feature there. So, Chairman, these are, from our point of view, well-considered works of a minor nature to part of the building which is important to the continued operation of Highcliffe Castle in terms of its tea room, but nonetheless are not the most significant or important parts of the Grade 1 listed building. They will facilitate safe access and comply with the Council's own requirements to meet the public sector equalities duty. For those reasons, and due to the limited intervention into the historic fabric of the site, we recommend both the planning and listed building consents for approval.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the officers? Councillor Hall.
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered, is there any increase in capacity for seating inside, or is there any extra capacity for outside seating?
Chairman, no, there's no plans to change the interior layout or capacity. It's simply to facilitate safer access in the event of a fire.
Thank you very much.
Certainly is, Chairman. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to propose that we go along as set out. I think it's very important that we move with the times, and that we make sure that we've got safe access and exit for everybody, whether they're disabled or able-bodied. So yeah, very happy to support the proposal.
It is proposed and seconded for approval as set out. All those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is carried, and there is, of course, the listed building application Again, do I see a proposal for that?
Very happy to propose.
Thank you. Councillor Geary? Thank you. Any debate? All those in favour, please show. Any against? That is carried. Thank you very much. We're still missing Mr. White, so we'll move on to the item 4C, which is the Somerford, Beefeater and Christchurch East Premier Inn, and this is Mr. Hodges again.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, so this is the existing Beefeater and Premier Inn site at Somerford Road, and the proposal is for the erection of a single-storey building to the front of the site for use as a drive-through coffee shop. Use the right mouse and I'll be able to move forward. Right, so again, a site I expect members are very familiar with. Looking down at the site with the aerial photo, some of the roundabout here, the large parking area to the front of the site, the Beefeater and the Premier Inn buildings behind. Therefore, you can see the layout and the relationship over to Somerford Road and the Meteor Park to the south. This is the existing layout at the site. You can see a substantial area of parking which serves the existing uses on the site, with the building, early 20th century building here as you approach down the Somerford Road from the roundabout. So the proposal is to erect a building here, Chairman, at the front of the site. This will involve reconfiguring the parking spaces lost to re-provide those, and also to provide some additional parking in this corner of the site near Edward Road properties. Access to the site remains unchanged. There's a single-storey building which can be used as a drive-through, but it's also a coffee shop in which you can go inside. Shown as Costa unit, a fairly standard design that you will have most likely have seen elsewhere, and fairly unremarkable in its design. The layout, again, there's just single open space in here. Coffee shop provided storage on this side here, and then, as I understand it, in effect the drive-through window at this point here. So looking at the site, you've got Somerford Road on the right-hand side here, and the proposed building will go in this approximately this location here where the existing parking is shown. And then this is just looking a bit further on. The building was sitting roughly in this area here, Chairman, with the remainder of the parking area reconfigured to accommodate it. And just a couple of views up and down Somerford Road from outside the site. So this is looking north, back up to the roundabout, and you can see the pedestrian crossing at this point here, looking back down south. This is the secondary access up towards the Edward Road end. And just to show you those views with the retail park visible on the left-hand side. So, Chairman, you'll see we set out in the report the merits for and against the proposals, in terms of the impact on the character and appearance of the area, the issues around the provision of a coffee shop in this particular location, and as a drive-through facility as opposed to a town centre use, and also with the possible highway impacts that may occur and the predicted traffic levels which will are shown to result on the transport assessment that you've seen with the application. Having weighed all those issues up and given due weight to the economic benefits which would arise and the number of jobs created, we're content to recommend this particular application for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask about the highways, because the majority of letters of objection, 18 of them, are not happy with the highways. Has the Highways Authority been consulted? And if so, what was their reaction? Because it's not in the report.
Chairman, it is in the report. I'll just take you to the relevant part of it. So in the consultations at 7.02, County Highways No objection, subject to condition regarding moving and parking and loading areas, which is recommended as condition. Let's just find that. Hang on, I'm just dropping to the bottom of the report to find the condition 5, Chairman. Apologies for that.
Thank you very much.
I wonder if I might ask the officer one or two questions on this. I'm looking at your the diagram, and am I correct in assuming that the bay spaces are added parking?
Chairman, we can flick back between the existing and proposed. So at the moment, what you've got is fairly regular layout there. And can you see those spaces there? They get reconfigured as part of instead of as tandem spaces instead of next to each other, for want of a better expression. And that's to facilitate sufficient space to drive around in the proposed drive-through facility.
I'm interested in is that and I think you've just illustrated it, that in the far southwest corner of the site, what used to be a exit onto highways land, the beige spaces are shown as, well, they are actually there at the moment, and I'm looking at Google Earth, which shows that there is spaces on this side here, and that's what does. How many spaces will be lost in total?
Bear with me while I just check the report. Thank you. Chairman, it's set out 811 in the report. So proposal provides a reduction of car parking spaces from 175 spaces to 152 to facilitate siting of the coffee shop.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll come back to that in debate. Are there any further questions? As there are no further questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hallam.
Sorry, I just had a delayed question that sprang to mind. With the highways, and obviously there we've got the new pedestrian crossing that's there. It's a little bit hit and miss whether it's working at the moment, and obviously that's going to have quite an impact to the highways. So I just wanted to know whether we've had any sort of comment around that at all.
Chairman, no. I mean, the response from the Highways Authority is verbatim as in the report. So this is not unusual for the responses that we get from the Highways Authority. If they have no objections, they'll simply state, we have no objections subject to imposing this condition, which ensures provision of the parking as indicated on the plan, rather than a particular analysis of where they got to that conclusion, Chairman.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? There are no further questions, Councillor. We're lucky that we have both Grange Road councillors, Councillor Jones and Councillor Abbott. Who would like to go first? Councillor Abbott.
It's just to say, I don't know if they're aware, but there's been a terrific concern about the traffic in the whole of that area. It's been constant since the Meteor site. We've got the traffic coming in and out of the Meteor site, practically opposite. You've got the traffic going in and out of Wilverley Road, and also in Edward Road, just a little bit further down from the entrance exit to the drive-in. You've got traffic constantly in and out from the housing estate and the school and the shops on that side, and it's absolute chaos. The picture you've shown, there's no traffic on there, which is quite a rare occasion on that stretch of road. I'm there very often. It's absolute chaos. People do not go to the Meteor Centre because of the traffic around there. I can't see how this is going to make it any better.
Thank you very much. Was that a proposal, Councillor Abbott, or just a contribution to debate?
A contribution.
Okay. Councillor Mrs Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I had no idea what Councillor Abbott was going to say, but it would look almost as if we'd been in collusion, and we haven't actually discussed this. If you look at the notes I've jotted down, you will find there is a repetition of many of the points made by my fellow councillor. We actually stayed in the Summerford when we were buying our present house many years ago. And I have been involved with Grange Ward for 20 years, 12 of those as councillor. So I am well aware of the situation and of the road problems. Just across from there is a sign that says Christchurch. It was actually a sign originally erected in wood back in the 1930s, when it was a runner-up in a competition for village or town signs. So it was the beginning, if you like, the gateway into Christchurch. Well, obviously it's changed a lot since then, and it's certainly got a lot busier. It's a very busy main road along which we've travelled tonight with great difficulty. And most times when we come to council meetings, you've got absolute gridlock. You've got the bypass there, you've got the B road here, you have got a very, very difficult traffic situation. As my fellow councillor says, you've got the industrial estate with traffic particularly coming down Wilverley Road. You've got Meteor Park opposite. And when we talk about, well, the majority of the would attract pass-by trade with a total of 50 new way vehicle trips generated on a typical day, I would imagine that a lot of the trips will actually not be passing by, but they will be from people who are shopping at the Meteor site. So they will be coming across the road to park there. You've got the traffic coming down Wilverley Road, which is just past where the diagram finishes. You've got the fact that the Summerford has one entrance and exit combined. It's difficult already. We're packing in, according to this, a lot of spaces where it will be very difficult to manoeuvre exactly by a major road where people are trying, and it's very often along this stretch, that when people see the difficulties on one or other of the roads, the bypass or Summerford, that people are trying to turn and move out. It's extremely dangerous along this section. And I, for one, cannot see how this can be safe to have something where you are putting in this extra traffic and saying, well, we can compensate by where you have got just above the head of the chairman, those side parking spaces. That's just a bit of trampled down ground, most of which has been made by taxis illegally coming through. It's not a suitable spot for people already trying to manoeuvre on a very difficult car park. It's a very busy, a very prosperous, very much in demand Summerford Inn. At times in the summer, it is absolutely packed. And I don't know when this traffic consultation was done, but it certainly wasn't done on a normal day. We go at various times of the week, not just to there, but to other places, as if you're going onto the Summer Estate, this is one way. So I would say, Mr. Chairman, that I have no objection to Costa coffee. I enjoy drinking it, but I do not think that this is a very safe and adequate proposal, and I would like to propose it be rejected on highway safety grounds.
That's the proposal for refusal. Is that seconded?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to second, but I'd like an officer to give me some advice, because can we use highways when highways are made no objection, please?
I would advise caution, because you have no highway authority objection to this scheme. There is a detailed traffic assessment that has been submitted as part of this application, which looks at traffic flow and has been provided by a set of highway consultants who work with Whitbread Inns and have been working on Costa Coffee drive-throughs across the country. So their evidence is on information provided by the actual use of these premises across the country. And their evidence is that the majority of the trips will be people who are already on the network, regardless of the Costa Coffee drive-through, and should therefore not be considered as new vehicle trips on the network. The transport assessment was done over a week, not just a day, and it was done in late December, which will be a fairly busy time in terms of the use of the premises, running up to Christmas, with a lot of shopping going on the other side of the road, and people staying at the inn, etc. They have looked at how the site operates at the moment and what the peak parking periods would be, and it's suggested that the use of the Costa Coffee site would not coincide with the peak usage of the restaurant or the hotel. So there is not proposed to be no conflict between the amount of parking to be provided on the site, remaining parking on the site, and the use and the need of the existing premises. This information would have gone to the Highway Authority as part of the consultation process, and we have a no objection from the Highway Authority based on the information submitted with the application, and it's a detailed traffic assessment. Therefore, I would advise severe caution on recommending refusal on highway safety grounds when we have no evidence to support that.
Thank you very much for that very explicit answer. I think it's bear noted, but I still think it's wrong. And I think we haven't done a sequential test like we have if it was in the town centre. But I do think it's an inappropriate development in this area. So I'm happy to support that we do refuse. I wondered if the inappropriate development in this area would be sufficient.
It was proposed and seconded for refusal, but I think it was mentioned on highway grounds, but if the proposers will be happy to accept the inappropriate development as a thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the county councillor for the division, and if you look on the plan, you'll see the River Mute. My borough council ward, for some strange reason, starts the other side of that river, so that the proposed development is actually within, I think, about 4 or 5 yards of my borough ward. I too know this, and I will say I cannot in conscience support this application. The reason is very simple. I live very close to this site. I see every day, if I go to Sainsbury's, I see the traffic. If I come into the council, I see the traffic. I see the problems that there, and as a county councillor, I have asked repeatedly for a full solution to this problem that would involve a much better system of traffic lights, road widenings, and so on. And unfortunately, we hit the problem of expense. The going into the site, I am concerned because you see cars frustrated by wanting to turn right out of the site, and they will take chances. And I have seen a lot of near misses where people have taken a chance getting out. We are going to see another set of lights, which, in my humble opinion, would actually exacerbate the transport problem. But we have to deal now with this particular, and the other point I would mention is it makes a lot of difference when late December is, because if it's the end of December, your industrial traffic is shut down. If it's the beginning of December, yes, okay, you're doing it, but your seasonal traffic is there. I would have thought that was an untypical time to take a traffic survey unless you wanted a particular set of results. Now, again, looking further, in the summer at the moment, you have that car park is pretty much full. Where are people going to park? They're going to park in the meter site and walk across. Or they'll leave the car there and they'll get a taxi. And again, you can see this. But I do share I could not support this proposal because of those grounds, but I do recognise the argument against although I know, and we will all remember, I think it's Honeypot Lane or Pennypot Lane in Burton, where we did refuse something on highways grounds and we lost on appeal. But I don't think the citing of this is a good idea. I don't think it will enhance the neighbourhood at all. I've heard it said there are plenty of other sites, but that's not the point. Is this a suitable building? This is what I'm looking at. Christchurch will have enough difficulties, I think, in the years to come. But just as you come past the boundary that will once again be the edge of Christchurch, because when the new town council comes in, the River Mute will be the boundary between that council and Highcliffe. Is it appropriate to have as a gateway where you have a rather attractive sign, you have trees, you have a gateway site, and you have a very attractive pub building which you can see from the road and appreciate, and suddenly you're going to replace it. Can we have the Costa Coffee picture up again, please?
The proposed plans, Chairman. That's
it, that'll do. And I would ask members to consider, do we really think that this off-the-shelf, designed without, this is it, we're going to put this here, it's the same as every other one, is it really what we want for Christchurch? I would love to support refusal on highway grounds. Highway grounds will explain why I cannot vote for this application. But the other reason why I do not like this application is I do not think this design, I do not think this standard everywhere you go in the country bit of architecture is appropriate for the gateway to our town. I'd be interested to see how the debate goes, but as I said, if the proposal were for refusal on highway grounds alone, I do not think I could support that because of the points that have been very aptly made by the officers. But I do not like the architecture, I do not like the design, I do not like the placement of it, I do not think it is appropriate, and those are the reasons. If those were to be put forward as a reason for refusal, I would be inclined to support it. Are there any further debate? Councillor Hallam.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually am in support of this application. I think when we look at not just that corner in isolation, but the whole area, there are a number of fast food chains around there. I think they're all a similar sort of standard building as what we've got here. So I think we would have a very difficult argument if that went to appeal. And I don't believe that the traffic is going to be massively impacted, to be quite honest. I drive up and down there 3, 4, 5 times a day, and the traffic is moving at a pace that actually is not really going to be impacted by another 15 vehicles. And I also believe that if I was shopping in Meteor Park, for example, I would actually park there and cross the road and walk across to go to Costa Coffee to use the facility. And I think the hotel, the Premier, would use this facility as well. So I think it isn't necessarily all around the parking and the vehicles. There is going to be a certain amount of footfall that uses the facility as well. So that's just where I sit.
Is there any further debate? Councillor Hall.
Chairman, because I think it's important that we are going that it's inappropriate in a location, but I think it's also, we should add, it's an inappropriate design because it isn't attractive and it does spoil the look of the building. It was designed for a private owner at one time and it was done very tastefully. This is an eyesore in my opinion, so I think that could be added to the reason for a refusal. And also, Chairman, any Costa Coffee around, and I've seen several of them, the amount of litter we get from cups and things, although they do put bins outside, they seem to get all over the town. Thank you.
I don't think we could, because that would be speculative and we would assume that the customers would use what they want. But Councillor Mrs Jones.
I would be very willing to support that it is an inappropriate design, because one of the things I would have said if I'd looked closely at my notes is that it is not a fitting accompaniment to the Summerford, which has been built of a specific design to be eye-catching at that point. It doesn't fit with it at all, and surely Costa Coffee could spend more money trying to provide something that fits in.
Is there any further debate? I wonder if we could hear the officers on the... Do I take it that the suggestion that we refuse on highways grounds is withdrawn? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So the proposal is, as I understand it, that this be refused as it is an inappropriate development in that particular location, and the design is it is an inappropriate development in that location. The design is inappropriate in its setting, and it is detrimental to its surroundings. Is that the? I wonder if I could hear the officers on that point of view, please.
Chairman, we can grasp the concept about the design. You'll need to relate that to one of your policies in your local plan, but you will find these policies listed at point 5 in the report. I think we'd need to tease out a little more the idea of it as an inappropriate development, what exactly that means in terms of the use, the location. We need to know a little bit more about that before we can advise you, I think, on the appropriateness of that, Chairman.
I'm as good at switching my microphone on as I'm remembering it to attach attachments. Looking at this, I think the proposers might be looking at policy HE2, design of the new development, and LM1, no, it's not a new dwelling. And I think that is the main cause that I certainly feel that this, given, as I said, what we would hope, when we have talked about the development of the Roshot Hill, we have been saying that we placed a lot of stress on the importance of having an attractive gateway to Christchurch. But the Roshot Hill will no longer, after the 1st of April, be the gateway to Christchurch. The gateway to Christchurch will be where it was in the 1930s, which is the River Mute. And I think the proposer and seconder of the motion might wish to consider a reference to the fact that this is a standardized development or a standardized building which does not do justice to its location and is inappropriate for a gateway development to Christchurch. Would that be?
Chairman, just to develop that a little bit further, policy HE2, which is on the design of new development, talks about design to be of high quality, reflecting and enhancing areas of recognised distinctiveness, and to achieve this, development be permitted if it's compatible with or improves its surroundings in relation to. And of the issues that you've got listed there, you have things like architectural style, materials, visual impact. Without putting words in your mouth, is that where you're driving at, Chairman?
I think that's where the proposers, yes. Are the officers happy with that? Well, I won't say happy, but are you content?
Chairman, is that the sum of the objection to the scheme, I think?
I believe so. I know there are objections on transport grounds, and but we can't. I know we can't. Yeah. Okay. It's proposed and seconded that this be refused on the grounds that it is contrary to HE2 in that it is an unattractive and inappropriate form of development in its intended setting. Is that agreed? All those in favour, and I shall vote. Against? That is refused. Is that Mr. White who's just arrived? Thank you, Mr. White. We deferred consideration of your item because of the traffic outside, which was pretty foul. So we now move to our last item, which is the first one on the agenda, which is consideration of the development at Avon Wharf. So again, Mr. Hodges, you again?
Yes, Chairman, thank you.
Right. Getting our money's worth out of you.
Yeah, back to front with the presentations, but yes, so this is an application, household application for alteration to this existing, get the words out, existing dwelling, which is basically opposite our offices here. So this is the location, the property here, part of a terrace of properties at Avon Wharf, and as I say, where we are sat is approximately here. This is just to show you it's in relationship. You'll see closer from the photographs how the properties are sit on a stagger, so that number 18 to the north extends further back this way, but number 19 and number 20 come further forward into a courtyard to the western side. And this is the existing design of the property as existing. So what is the front elevation to the west, facing into the courtyard with roof lights, and this former garage area here. And then on the rear elevation, as you can see, this in cross section, these roof lights serving these rooms here, and then an existing balcony serving the living space. And this gives you some idea of the sort of split level of the buildings. That's sometimes quite hard to read if you're looking at photographs of the site, and how that you have a courtyard level here where the garage carport is, and then the living space is in effect raised up above that. Chairman, you'll see from the report that this application follows an earlier application which was withdrawn. These are the plans for the first attempt, and they proposed a fairly large box dormer to the front here, a further dormer to the rear, and this, in effect, dormer with a Juliet balcony arrangement on the rear. The applicant withdrew that following advice from your conservation officer that we couldn't support this particular form of development and design because we considered it to be out of keeping. So this has led eventually to the current proposals, and in particular the designs now show a dormer window on the front and two to the rear. I have noticed at para 805 in the report we've got that the wrong way round, where we've said two on the front and one on the rear, so apologies for that. But it is two to the front on the west and then two to the east on the rear. And the designs that you have before you now have been amended in line with the advice from the Conservation Officer, and in particular to have these sloping back designs which are reflective of the original dormer designs that you'll see a remainder of the terrace, and we'll take you through those in some of the photographs in a minute. So this is just to help members in terms of assessing the importance of the buildings within the conservation area. And this is from your adopted conservation area appraisal document. And within that, there's a designation plan that sets out the value of the particular buildings within the conservation area as a whole. And for members' benefit, so the red buildings are all statutorily listed buildings, grade 2 listed buildings, so include the bridge and a number of the properties along Bridge Street. The bluey purple buildings are locally listed, so on a list that we adopted as buildings important to the conservation area previously. And then the green buildings are buildings that the conservation area appraisal identifies as buildings which contribute positively to the conservation area. So you'll see that this is a strong part of the conservation area where a number of the buildings are heritage assets which contribute significantly to its character. But in particular, the conservation area appraisal doesn't identify this particular development as contributing positively to the conservation area, and so you need to approach the determination of the application with that in mind in terms of the weight that should be given to the designs of the buildings and their contribution, and particularly in considering the impacts that they may have on the conservation area as a whole. So looking at the photographs, and one of the reasons for picking up these details on here is to show you the variety in the terrace currently, how the buildings are set on different footprints in positions, how they incorporate features such as these full-length balconies here at ground floor, at first floor, how you have existing dormer windows with this sloping back design. Just on the bottom right, this shows you the carport that's been created, and we confirm in the report that that's an element of the scheme that doesn't require planning permission. Just to show you some of this clear view, members will be very familiar with this longer view down the river from the bridge. But this is for us an important view, just to show you how that design of opening exists on the building currently, and how the proposed design has sought to pick up on that particular style and form in order to reflect the existing appearance of the terrace as a whole. And this is just looking in on the courtyard position. So this is the property here. You see the carport that's been created and the existing appearance of the properties as they face into that internal courtyard. So, Chairman, just to confirm, the scheme's been through a number of iterations before arriving in front of you to address the issues that we'd identified about the impact on the wider heritage asset of the conservation area. We're now satisfied with the detail of the scheme, and your conservation area officer also agrees and offers his support to the designs as proposed. Just to confirm, the recommendation, the start of the report does refer to the need to carry out a satisfactory planning obligation. There is no planning obligation recommended, and the application is recommended for approval, just subject to the conditions listed at the end of the report, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now we have speakers on this item. There is Mr. Fenning on behalf of 18 Avon Wharf. Mr. Fenning's here. And we have Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is here. You each have 3 minutes. Who's going first? Mr. Fenning, would you like to come to the table in front of? I would give you a few moments to introduce yourself, then the green light will come on and you have 3 minutes from then.
Good evening. My name is Peter Fenning and I've lived in Avon Wharf since 1984. This evening I'm speaking as Secretary of the Christchurch Conservation Trust and also on behalf of 6 other Avon Wharf households. Well, we all oppose this application because it involves substantial change to number 19 Avon Wharf by introducing dormer windows into the roofscape, plus the introduction of a large glazing plus a new glass conservatory. Avon Wharf is a development of 3 terraces of dwellings built in 1881 to the design of Christchurch architect Gordon Robbins, who lives just a few metres away. His design was commended in the 1982 Civic Trust Awards. You'll note that the officer's report states, in the Town Centre Conservation Area Appraisal, our buildings do not contribute positively to the local character and appearance of the Christchurch Conservation Officer, and we've just heard that from the officer. I ask you to contrast this with the comments of the Council's Conservation Officer, not given in the report, but are dated 24th January this year on the planning file, stating, Avon Wharf development is an attractive part of the Christchurch Conservation Area and is a perfect example of regenerated development. Elsewhere, a reference is made to a beautiful set of buildings. I think you would agree, quite a contrast. The applicant wishes to replace 3 flush-in roof Velux windows with 3 upstanding dormer windows, one of which incorporates a Juliet balcony. In the first application, which the Conservation Officer could not support, was withdrawn. The officer's comment was that the proposal to alter our award-winning building complex is not a suitable intervention for the street or riverside view. Currently, there are just 8 dormer windows among the 21 dwellings. Why so few? It's because Mr. Robbins' design was to minimise the number. He was aware of the need for flowing roof lines, one of his trademark designs. The Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan, page 55, describes the roof lines of buildings in Bridge Street opposite Avon Wharf as having a preponderance of dormer windows, with some being excessive and compromising the scale of the overall building. The same effect will occur if you permit 3 dormers at number 19. Mr. Robbins' design will be compromised. On the glass conservatory and Juliet balcony views from the riverside and Waterloo Bridge, they will be compromised. We consider this application is contrary to Town Plan Policy B41 and H12 1 and 2 plus Core Strategy HE2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fenning. And the second speaker, Mr. Smith. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Now I'll give you a few seconds to introduce yourself, and then the green light will come on. You have 3 minutes from then.
Brilliant.
Now, yeah. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and councillors. My name's Nick Smith. I'm speaking on behalf of my parents-in-law, Mr. and Mrs. Costa, of number 18 Avon Wharf, and I'm also speaking on behalf of Mrs. Foster, who resides at number 20 Avon Wharf. I'm also a school governor at Twynham Primary School. So all three of the people I'm representing object to this application. Over the last year, they have all had concerns over 2 planning applications plus various amendments and revisions proposed for roof works and construction of a new glazed conservatory at number 19. At no time has the applicant engaged with them to discuss his plans and what intrusive works he intends to carry out on the east-west supporting gable walls of their dwellings. At item 9.15 of the officer's report, it is stated that the proposals involve development attached to these party walls. Advice has been sought, and it is that they are not party walls at the locations of the proposed glass conservatory. They consider that the replacement of 3 roof-flushed Velux windows by upstanding dormers will seriously disrupt the flowing nature architectural roofscape. Additionally, it will compromise the original Cheshire Robins design of a minimal number of 8 dormers throughout the whole of Avon Wharf. 1 dormer is proposed for the top floor at the front, and as such will look directly down into the lower windows of the 2-storey dwelling at number 14 Avon Wharf. An objection to this overlooking was sent to the council by the occupant, Mrs. June Cook. Such overlooking is contrary to Section 2 of Town Planning Policy H12, loss of privacy. All 3 proposed dormers, 1 incorporating a Juliet balcony, are inappropriate in character, design and scale, disrupting the clear line of the existing flowing roofscape. As such, it is contrary to Town Planning Policy H12, Section 1. The introduction of a ground floor glazer conservatory to the rear of number 9 is totally alien to the Gordon Robins design and the surrounding conservation area, especially when viewed from the public open space across the river, Avon. As such, it is contrary to Town Plan Policy BE4, Section 1, in that its siting, design and scale do not respect or complement those of existing buildings and spacing at spaces located at Avon Wharf. I request that the committee refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. And can I take this opportunity to thank all the people who have come to speak to us, because we do value your contribution, and it does help us to know how you feel these applications affect you. We now have Mr. White, who is the applicant, who's speaking obviously in support of the application. Again, Mr. White, I'll give you a few seconds to introduce yourself, then the green light comes on.
Okay. Good evening. I'm the owner of number 19 Avon Wharf. It's currently rented out to a tenant. Okay, I'll start. Right, so I just wanted to point out other properties with similar alterations in Avon Wharf, which has been highlighted. But for instance, number 21, approved formation of first floor balcony at rear, including introduction of patio doors. Number 20, approved insertion of kitchen window at first floor level. Number 17, approved flat roof with balcony to rear elevation. And number 16, again, approved first floor dormer. So the key points: alterations have been made to other dwellings to refurbish and upgrade with the additional features of dormers and balconies. All properties were meant to benefit from rear terraces. However, like number 19, some are more shadowed and hidden than others, and they would benefit, in our opinion, more from the extra internal space rather than a shaded terrace. We are aware that the development is within the conservation area and have carefully considered any alterations. We consider our proposal to be in keeping with the surrounding upgraded properties, also in the conservation area. The design and general visual impact will be an improvement to the river facade. The existing terrace of buildings from 16 to 21 Avon Wharf do not have a uniform appearance, varying in ridge and eaves height, roof styles, dormers, balconies and windows. The design would maintain acceptable privacy levels of neighbouring properties, not affecting their living conditions in any way. Overall, the scheme has sought to minimise general disturbance to amenity and neighbouring properties. So during the planning process, we had liaised with the Environment Agency and made the requested amendments of ensuring our proposals did not encroach on the existing flood barrier by removing the proposed balcony and adequate space was left around the barrier in case of any future maintenance. The Environment Agency had no further objections to our proposals. We had also liaised with the Conservation Officer and had made requested amendments of ensuring our proposals maintained existing character by reducing the dormers, amending the shape and glazing to the side cheeks similarly to other dormers accepted in the wharf. The Conservation Officer agreed that the revisions proposed would respect the character of the existing design and our proposals would be supported. Highways had no objections and environmental health no objections. Contrary to the previous speaker, we did have liaison with number 18. A letter was received from number 18 stating their only concern was for the side access to their balcony. By removing our balcony as requested, the Environment Agency also ensured that number 18 kept their access. There wasn't any further objection stated in the letter. We have taken on all comments on board and amended the drawings accordingly to respect the character of the existing design. Thank you.
Very much. Are there any questions to the officers on the basis of the information? Councillor Hall?
Chairman, I'm rather confused because I did see on the web page on the 24th of January that was dated from the Conservation Officer stating quite clearly that this application could not be supported and for this location. Can I ask the officer, why isn't that in our report? Because I can't find it in there.
That response was in respect of the application as submitted and the withdrawn application. The Conservation Officer couldn't support the withdrawn application for the reasons that David has set out in his report to you this evening, in that the form of the proposed extensions was inappropriate to the design of the buildings that surrounds it. If I can read to you from that comment, the current application you have before you is application 8/18/2200. If I read it, a similar scheme is applied for within this proposal with a considered approach to scaling and proportion of intervention, especially in connection to the dormer windows and previously asked for balcony adjacent to the new French windows that front the riverside. The ground floor waterfront elevation garden room did bring forth objections from various consultees, and this part of the proposal has been significantly amended in order to comply with access legislation and other planning considerations. The scale and proportions of the dormer windows and the French doors that form part of this proposal do not significantly alter the size of the roof aperture that is currently displayed. The French doors to the rear or to the riverside elevation have most impact by increasing the existing roof aperture by approximately 1 square metre. When considering the impact that this proposal could make to the existing roofscape within the assistant of the applicant's agents, a negotiated change of materials is now proposed. The change of material that affects the side cheeks of the new dormers is that they remain clear. A transparent wall supporting a lightweight roof structure creating an impression of an open top hung window. This approach is displayed elsewhere across this large roof. This approach allows for the large roof slope to be visible and not to compromise the flow of the pitch. Precedents are not a usual reason for permitted alterations within a conservation area, but when weighed against the improved light and circulation of this beautifully designed set of dwellings, the impact of the setting is considered to be less than significant. The restricted balcony with transparent gasset supported roof is also considered to be less than substantial harm to the design and to the setting. The Avon Wharf development is an attractive part of the Christchurch Central Conservation Area and is a perfect example of regenerative development. The alterations as asked for within this amended proposal have come about after extensive negotiations between the planning officer and the agent. I am now in a position to support the proposal. Now that information has been available on the website since that date. So yes, the conservation officer did object to the scheme as proposed, but after significant negotiations with the conservation officer, the planning officer and the applicant's agent, we've come up with a scheme that is before you this evening, which is recommended for approval because it has overcome all those earlier objections, and we feel that it now complies with, it doesn't significantly impact on the character of this building within the conservation area.
May I thank Mrs. King for a very comprehensive answer, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman. One of the speakers mentioned that from the front dormer window of number 19, you would be able to look into number 14 directly. I just want to double check that we have taken that into consideration.
Thank you, Chairman. It's helpful, I think, if I take you to the existing layout of the property. So this is the area at the front here where I've got the mouse cursor. So as it stands at the moment, there's a substantial roof light on the front elevation, which affords views out into the courtyard. So in effect, the change is not any different in terms of there being an opening at the front during which someone could have a view into the courtyard. So where you already have that relationship, it's very difficult for the council to argue there's a loss of privacy if that relationship already exists, Chairman.
Am I right in thinking that the number of dormer windows has been increased to 3 in an area where there are only 8 to the entire development?
Yes, that's correct, but that's not a reason to object to the scheme. The design of the proposed extension has been carefully considered to not significantly, in our view, impact on the overall design. As our conservation officer says, this is an attractive part of the conservation areas and a perfect example of regenerative development. The alterations, as asked for, have now resulted in a scheme that is, we consider, satisfactory within this location. There is no reason to say that there couldn't be additional dormers in this location. There are existing openings.
Could I just ask, does that mean that all the others who don't have dormer windows could apply for dormer windows and it would be regarded as acceptable?
We've already approved a number of dormer windows on this development in the past. Each application is considered on its merits, as you're aware, and we would take each application in turn. The application as submitted originally wasn't acceptable because of the form of those dormers. We now consider that it is acceptable because it follows the design principles of the existing development. So I can't say that others would be acceptable. It would depend on their design, their location, and how they fit with the rest of the scheme.
I'd like to thank the officer for her very detailed replies. So, am I correct in thinking that you don't think, in your opinion, that this move to so much change is not altering the character?
No, in our opinion, the design and form of the extension or the alterations proposed are in keeping with the character of the building. As our conservation officer says, it is a fairly striking design, and we wouldn't be recommending to you anything that we didn't feel was in keeping with that location.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? I would like, if I may, to tease out one or two further points. I'm a little concerned, and I know it's not a direct matter for us at this instant. We are saying now that I think you said it's a beautiful piece of urban design, and far be it from me to dispute that. But am I not correct? Hang on. No, where's it gone? Am I not correct that the supplementary planning aspects say that this is unsuccessful as a piece of urban design, leaving awkward, unusable spaces with difficult unresolved management issues. Now, apart from the fact that the next sentence, in my opinion, is entirely a political one and it doesn't fit in this report, on this point, on the one hand, you've got it saying this is an unsuccessful piece of design, and in the other, we're now saying this is award-winning and it's beautiful.
Chairman, I think the message we would get over to you is what will be given most weight by an inspector in looking at the scheme. And what they will give most weight to is a document adopted by the council as guidance, and they will give most weight to the most recent document adopted by the council. So therefore, the greater amount of weight will be given to the comments in the conservation area appraisal. That dates back from 2005. So the assessment in there is in effect the one an inspector would be likely to turn to and give greatest weight in assessing any appeal on site were the application to be refused. Not that we're suggesting that's what you should do, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's one point. The next point I would like to query is 806. Now, we've had this, I think some of this read out, but it doesn't seem to me to make sense. The scale and proportions of the dormer windows and French doors that form part of this proposal do not sufficiently alter in size of roof aperture that is currently displayed. Does not compute.
Okay. It significantly alters. So in effect, at the moment, Chairman, you've got a very substantial roof light there and there. And what the proposal does, which the withdrawn scheme clearly didn't, is look to work within the size of that opening that you have. So in fact, that dormer window is largely identical to the large roof light. This is slightly bigger because in effect it's forming French doors and Juliet balcony, but it works within the scope and scale of, for example, the opening that you'll see on number 18 next door.
Thank you. Is it fair to say that the conservation officer found the original application was unable to support it for the reasons given at that time, and what you're now saying to us in that it's the opinion of the officers that the objections raised by the conservation officer have been addressed, and that in your opinion this is now an acceptable application?
Yes, Chairman. I mean, just looking at the withdrawn scheme, here you've got a very standardised box dormer on the front. You've got a twin paned opening on the rear with an odd protected element extending over either side. Those elements aren't, and also this full length extension here, those are all elements that we don't see on the building currently. And the reasons for coming to the design that you've now got is you've now got these slope back dormers which are much smaller, and they've got a design which you've seen from the photographs is typical and existing on the building. So the conservation officers obviously driven the applicant towards that for a reason, in order to design a scheme that's sympathetic to the wider character of the terrace. You can also see a similar opening in here.
How far is it the case that from what you've said, we're not dealing with hard facts like this window, were it 3 foot by 3 foot, would be unacceptable, but at 2 foot by 2 foot it is acceptable. But we're dealing with value judgments which members of the committee will have to make. How far have the objections that the conservation officer raised to the first application, how far have they been met, and have they been met in sufficient degree for the committee to approve it?
Chairman, our advice is that the original concerns of the conservation officer have been met in full. And in effect, what we're dealing with is a sympathetic alteration to the structure and design and form of the building. So in effect, what the applicant has done is sort of take on board the advice that he's been given from your conservation expert.
And one final question. I wonder if the officers, for the benefit of the committee and certainly for the people watching, could outline the principle of allowing a development in the conservation area. Is it that it must neither detract nor
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That's set out in the report at the end in the conclusions. So there's a statutory test, and the statutory test set out in the Planning Act is that any development must either preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the conservation area. Also, in determining application, we must apply our adopted policies, and they're set out in the report, particularly the heritage asset ones, and also the national guidance in the planning policy framework, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's very useful information. I will now move into the debate. If there are no further questions, Councillor Hall, you're the Ward Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, I have certainly listened to the residents and our planning officers, and I think this is a very important site. I remember when this was being built, and after it was built, the architect who designed it was awarded with many accolades for his design and the way it worked in that area. It had previously been a boatyard, and this was a vast improvement on that development. There's 21 houses, I believe, are being built, and what does concern me, we're still getting from this development overlooking, and in my opinion, that's not acceptable. It overlooks number 14, the window, and to me, that is just not right. It's very close. And I think we've got a lot of policies, Chairman, which I will mention, that would do this. I think because it is a conservation area, it should enhance and preserve the area. And really, it doesn't do that, in my opinion. It's detrimental to this area. It is a very attractive area, and I think we've got enough policies to refuse this because it is out of character and it'd be detrimental to the site. It is a conservation area. It's a very important one. And as I say, originally the architect got a lot of praise for his design. I think that's very important to remember. So I'd like to propose that it's refused, and I'll give you all the reasons, that it's contrary to BE4, 1, and BE4, 4. Also, there's other policies that it can be against, HE2, and also we have got other policies that will be supporting against it. So if I'd like to give you all of those, I think it's important that we do that, Chairman, and that it should be refused because it is detrimental to this very important conservation area right in the town centre. So that's my proposal, that it is refused, and we should make sure that development in an area like this should be up to a certain standard that we can be proud of in the 21st century. I don't think we can be proud of this development, Chairman, with the way it's gone. So I would like to add H12, 1 and 2 as a way against the application.
That's a proposal for refusal for the reason stated. Is that seconded? Is that refusal seconded? That is seconded. Is there any further debate? Is there any further debate? As there is no further debate, do the officers wish to come back?
Yes, I would comment that your conservation officer considers that this is an appropriate development within the conservation area and has worked hard with the applicant to negotiate a scheme which does not have an adverse impact on the conservation area. It is argued that this is, as I say, I quote again his final sentence, the Avonworth development is an attractive part of the conservation area and is a perfect example of regenerative development. The alterations as asked for within this amended proposal come about after an extensive negotiations, and I am now in a position to support the proposal. So you have the support of your conservation officer that this scheme is not an inappropriate form of development within the conservation area and does not have an adverse impact. see if there's anything else.
Councillor Hallam.
Thank you. Having listened to the proposal and the officer and residents, I am very sensitive to residents of the area. I am familiar with the development as well. And whilst I recognise that it is an award-winning development and it was fantastic in its day, we have moved on somewhat. And I think that the fact that the resident of number 19 has actually worked with our conservation officer and has also been sympathetic to keep it with the other alterations that have happened across that development, so i.e. the dormer windows, keeping it into the same line. I actually feel that it would be very difficult to take this to appeal, and I feel that I'm going to have to support the officers on this particular recommendation.
Thank you. Is there any further debate?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to come back because it is a very important area. And I know what the conservation officer said, but we have got other riverside areas that have been a disaster, one not far from me, and we don't want another disaster. And to my opinion, this is completely out of keeping with this conservation area. So I still think the proposal that I put forward and the policies that I mentioned are sufficient to win any appeal. So I think it should be supported, Mr. Chairman.
We'll now move to the vote. It is proposed and seconded for refusal on the grounds stated. All those in favour, please show.
Chairman, I think we really need to understand what the reasons for refusal are beyond just quoting the policies before we actually get to, because we've had matters raised of privacy, of impact of conservation area, so we need to narrow that precisely down. What is the harm, please?
I've already mentioned the policies. I go back to the original one, which is a safe policy, BE4. BE41 and BE44, important views within and out of the area and are maintained. And in my opinion, that again won't be maintained. You're having 3 extra dormers and that does spoil the whole skyline. Then you've got H12, 1 and 2. They are appropriate, should be appropriate scale, design, and to the maturity of the immediate locality. At least the scale and design, I think, are still out of character. And 2, the residential amenities of existing and future occupiers are not adversely affected. And by that overlooking, Chairman, they are certainly affected. So the occupiers shouldn't be adversely affected. They will be adversely affected. HE2 of the core strategy, that again should be against it on architectural style, scale and bulk and the visual impact. So really, Chairman, I think if it went to appeal, we could easily win. And I think that's the reason I proposed it. Thank you very much.
I think what the officer was driving at might have been that they would like to see specific reasons in that the increase in the number of dormers is detrimental to the overall appearance of the scheme, that the amenities of the neighbour are adversely affected by overlooking. Unless I am wrong, we can't just quote a policy. We have to say how the development breaches that policy. And I think we can say, I think it would be permissible to argue that some of that in the opinion of the committee, the proportions of the dormer windows and French doors significantly and adversely affect the appearance or the scale and proportions of the property, and I think that's what the officers would be looking for, because if we just say it transpires that we're going to get they are going to be asking us at appeal, asking the officers at appeal, and conceivably asking us at appeal, why we think this is. Now you mentioned the policies, and I think that there are. It appears to me that it's a balanced decision, and that we would be able to. Certainly, we could put an approach forward, but we do need to say why we think it transgresses H12 and the other policies. Am I correct, Mrs. King?
Yes, Chairman, exactly.
I've mentioned those policies and you've already reiterated them, so I'm very happy with that, the ones that you've stated, but I've already done that.
Well, I won't say are we happy, but
Chairman, I think
do you need further clarification?
yes, I think so. I think our difficulty is if those dormer windows have been designed to match the form, scale and size of the existing dormers that are present within the terrace, we're wondering how we move on to the next step of saying that's out of keeping, harmful, out of character. So if it replicates a design feature that's already present and prevalent on the building, it's a leap forward from that point to then suggest that that is harmful. And I think this second issue about the overlooking is if there is an existing bedroom and a room here with an opening in that position, and the proposal simply change that opening, again, where's a leap forward to the harm involved, because that relationship currently exists, Chairman. That's where we're seeking the additional clarification, if that helps.
Chairman, it's the number of the dormers as well, which is a big increase to the present state.
Yes, I think there must come a point where the number of dormers, we heard that the architect had deliberately restricted the number of dormers, so there must come a point where the number of dormers increases to the point where it affects the flow of the design. And I think what the councillor is getting at is that this is a step too far, in that it does bring in another dormer window. I'm just trying to find if the is that the one? No, that's not the one, is it? I think we'll have to put it in that way, that we feel that the increase in the number of dormers is unacceptable, if that's the point. The impact that this could make to existing roofscape and the assistance, a negotiated change of material is now proposed, and I think it might be said that the proposed changes do not, in the committee's opinion, meet the concerns or that the conservation officer originally expressed. Would that be?
So I missed the last bit about the conservation. Well, the conservation officer is happy with the scheme, so I will be not happy with making reference to the conservation officer's comments, because the conservation officer did objected to the original scheme, but has worked hard to get a scheme which now, in our opinion, does respect and reflect the character of the building and the character of the conservation area.
Would it be fair to say that the committee doesn't agree with that, that we do feel that there is still unacceptable impact as Councillor Hall has said, in the number of the dormers, for example, an increase in the number of the dormers?
You'd have to say why that's harmful. Because at the moment, just saying there's an increase in dormers when we've already approved other dormers in this development in the past, Why is it harmful? That's the question that needs to be addressed.
Would it be fair to say that it disrupts that the number of dormers has reached a point where further addition would disrupt the flow of the design?
Yes, if that's what members feel.
That's correct, Chairman, we do. And also, Chairman, as I've said so many times, it doesn't preserve or enhance it.
Yeah. Trying to put that into planning speak. Are members of the committee now clear on what you're voting? That this is contrary to our policy in that the additional number of dormers disrupts the flow of the building as originally conceived to an unacceptable extent.
And Mr. Chairman, the other policies as well that I mentioned.
Again, we have to put something in on each policy. Are you happy with the other policies that Councillor Hall's mentioned and the examples given?
Yes, the other one you might wish to add, if you're talking about the impact on the conservation area, is your policy HE1, which is your policy on impact on heritage assets, which you haven't mentioned today.
I'd like to put that in, Chairman, and I'd like to thank the officer.
Thank you. Right, are we there?
Yes.
Right, we can now put this to the vote. It is proposed and seconded that this application be refused for the reasons set out, and I don't want to go through them again, but I will if I'm asked. Right, all those in favour please show. 1, 2, 3. Against? 2. That is refused. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, but we have a special treat. We have 2 appeal decisions for Mrs. King to tell us about.
Yes, Chairman, we've actually had some quite interesting appeal decisions within the borough. Just find them on my agenda. The first one that's on your agenda at page 47, which was at 14 Bure-Homage Lane, was proposed to sever land and erect a 2-bedroom detached bungalow. It was on a very tight site with significant tree coverage. If you protected the trees and enhanced the trees, then it ended up with a very, very small plot of land. And the inspector agreed with your officers that it was an inappropriate form of development in this location and should be dismissed. The second application, the second appeal on page 51, was not dissimilar to the discussion you've just had. This was for the addition of just 2 roof lights on the upper floor of the office conversion to residential at Dolphin House in Church Street, where your officers had again worked very hard with the applicants to ensure that the design of the development respected its conservation area setting. And 2 additional roof lights, they're actually retrospective applications, so we're now working to get them removed, were installed that broke the rhythm of the roof. We refused the application. The applicant was apoplectic because he couldn't understand how we could even consider refusing just 2 roof lights. And the inspector was very clear that because you can see them clearly from the castle, and now some of the trees have come down around the castle grounds itself, that the English Heritage have taken down recently, you can clearly see that roof. And we were very pleased with that decision because it reinforced our view that you have to be careful when you design things in a conservation area. The last appeal was a Greenbelt proposal. A bit of a mixed bag, really, the decision. This is a Greenbelt site. It was an old nursery site. Those of you know it, just off the start of Avon Causeway, where the existing buildings on the site have been replaced with small office and workshop units. and the applicants had put some portable office units in there without planning permission. We refused them as an inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. The inspector accepted they were inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, was given a 3-year temporary permission. Now, I think we all know what a 3-year temporary permission means in effect. It'll be quite difficult to get rid of them. So we were not that, we almost considered challenging this decision. But the way the inspector had constructed her argument, we didn't think it was worth pursuing it, but it was not the most satisfactory outcome to an appeal where the inspector accepted that it was inappropriate in the Greenbelt.
Mr. Chairman, I think the planning officer has done very well to win those 2 appeals, and should congratulate them, because they were very difficult ones. And again, they're in the town. That was one in the town centre, and it is a very prominent building. So well done.
Thank you. Can I ask, did we at scrutiny we heard some very good news about planning? Have you got the figures with you? Because I think the committee
haven't got them with me, but I could let you know that the performance of your planning department in terms of the determination of applications against nationally set targets is very good. We have exceeded our national targets excessively, and I think our turnaround rate on smaller applications is in the high 90s. So we can't get much better. So it's a sort of cliff stick, really, because if we do keep at that rate, then we can't improve. We can only go down. But no, the officers work very hard to determine applications.
Can I say that, and I'd like this minuting, please, that I have been proud in all the years that I have been chairman, and I think this is my 10th year as either, no, it's my 12th year as either chairman or vice chairman. I have been consistently proud of the work that the officers have done, and I am particularly proud now in the incredibly challenging circumstances that they're facing of splitting the department back into Christchurch and East Dorset, and then preparing for half of it to be absorbed into Bournemouth and half of it to be absorbed into the county. And with all the uncertainties that that means about jobs, to achieve these figures is absolutely phenomenal, and I hope the committee would like to express its warm congratulations to the officers and ask that those comments be passed on to each and every officer, please. Right, thank you very much, and I'll close the meeting. Thank you.